When we began this series, I asked you, why do you work? And our conclusion together is that we work to make money. And over the course of this series, you try to understand, how does the Torah engage with that desire to make money? And what does it lay out as the actions, tools, steps a person has to take in order to be blessed with financial success by Hashem? And we've landed on three key pillars. What we've just completed in part 7, placing Hashem's will before your own, negating your rotzon in front of Hashem's rotzon. In part 6, we discussed kovei itim b'Torah, having fixed times for learning Torah as a minimum, but ultimately making Torah the primary obsession of our lives. And in part 5, tzedakah. These are the three pillars of the Torah's guidance to a person, how to be blessed with financial success. Doing Hashem's rotzon, making Torah the primary part of your life, and giving tzedakah. I'd like to share with you today a Gemara to really sum everything up. Most incredible Gemara. It's in Daf Lamed Hamad Beis in Brochas, which deals with each of these three things. The Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Chanina bar Papa Rameh. Rabbi Chanina bar Papa presents a contradiction between two psukim. Ksiv, on the one hand, it's written in the Torah, Ulekachti degani be'itoi. Hashem says, I will take my grains in its time. Uchsiv, and the other verse says, Ve'asafto deganecho, you will gather your grains. Two inherent contradictions between these two psukim. In the first, Hashem says, I will collect my grains. And in the second, the pasuk says, you will collect your grains. Whose grains are they? And who's doing the collection? Is a contradiction between these two psukim. Says Rabbi Chanina bar Papa loy kasha, there's no contradiction. Listen carefully to his words. Kan bizman shisrael oisin retzoyna shel mokim, v'kan bizman she'ein Yisrael oisin retzoyna shel mokim. The second verse, where you will gather your grains, is talking about a time when a Jew is doing the rotzon of Hashem, placing Hashem's will at the forefront of every decision that he makes. When you're doing that, you will gather and reap and harvest the fruits of your efforts. But when a Jew is not doing Hashem's rotzon, when he places his will, his thoughts, his plans, his desires ahead of God's, he thinks that if he works more, he'll do better, even if he doesn't go to daven, and if he drops his chavrusa, and if he doesn't give his tzedakah, and if he steals a little bit here, or doesn't keep to his times according to his contract, or he works ridiculous hours that negate every type of avodas Hashem because he thinks he's the one making his money. He's not doing rotzon Hashem. Says Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, that's when lekachti degani be'ita. Hashem says you won't reap the fruits of those efforts. The central pillar, says Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, of whether a person enjoys the labor of his hands, but if he actually harvests at the end of the day from his efforts, is, are you doing Ritzona Shel Mokum, or are you not doing Ritzona Shel Mokum? That's the key driver of our financial success. The next Gemara, same page. Amar Rabba Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eli. Rabbi Yochanan taught in the name of the Tana, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eli, Boy Ura'ai, come and see. I'm going to teach you something, says Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eli. It's not going to be from psukim. There's no need to have imunah in the Torah. None of that we've been spending our entire series learning. Just come and see. The evidence is in front of you. If you look with your own eyes and you look at human experience, you will see it evidences it. He says, Boy Ura'ai, come and see. Sheloi kadoiros harishonim doiros achronim. That the original doiros are not like the latter doiros. Doiros harishonim asu torosan keva umelachtan arai. The earlier generations, they made their Torah fixed. They never compromised their learning time for anything. It was the primary obsession of their life. Umelachtan arai, and their work could move, it could flex. If there was a great shir on, they'd go to the shir, work a little bit less. Felt like davening a little bit more. It didn't matter if they worked a little bit less and opened their store a little bit later that day. Torah was their primary obsession and work was a secondary. Zo v'zo niskayime b'yoda. Both Torah and their livelihood was in their hands. That Torah was in their hands, that's no surprise. Torah was their primary obsession. That's what they spent their day. That's the time they never compromised. But the Chiddush was, if you look at their lives, the thing where you would least expect it in their parnasa, which they never took so seriously, their effort there, they were blessed there too as a result of their commitment to having fixed times for learning Torah. Doros achronim. But these latter generations where we are, she'asu melachtan keva v'torosan ara, they made their work the uncompromisable part of their lives, the fixed part of their life. V'torosan ara, and their Torah fitted in, temporal, fitted in whenever there was time, and if there wasn't, you missed it for the day, it doesn't make a difference. Zu v'zu lo niskayime b'yodam. Neither Torah nor parnasa was in their hands. The fact that they never had Torah was no surprise. It was low priority. But says Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eli, not even parnasa did they have. The level of financial blessing that the earlier generations received as a byproduct of their commitment to fixed times for learning way surpassed the financial status of these latter generations who are obsessed about work but are far less successful. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eli laid down for us clearly what we learned together in part 6 of this series, that the source of blessing at our work is our commitment to the centrality of the learning of Torah in our lives on a day-to-day basis. That's much more of a driver of financial success than the hours and time and length of day that we spent sitting in the office and doing our work. And finally, Rabbi Bar Chana says again, Amar Rabbi Bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eli, Boy Ura'ai, come and see again. Sheloi k'doiros harishonim doiros achronim. That the earlier generations were not like these latter generations. Again, the earlier generations who had Torah, who had financial blessing. And these latter generations who have neither Torah nor financial blessing. Why is that? Come and see. Doiros harishonim hayu machnisin peirosein derech traksamoin. The earlier generations would bring their fruits in through the main gate of their yard or the main gate of their house, in order to obligate those grains in Maisa. The Torah only obligates a person to take Truma and Maisa on crops that have been harvested if the crops see the Pnei Habayis, the front of the house, to bring it in through the front, the main gate, in order to be obligated in Truma and Maisa. Those earlier generations, they were so committed to funding the poor with their Maisa Oni, to funding the Levim, Avodas Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash, the Kahuna, that they purposefully made sure that every fruit they harvest came through that front door so that they would have an obligation to give Maisa to those who need it. Doiros ha'achronim, but these latter generations, Machnisin peirosayim derech gagois, derech chatzairos, derech kapaifois, kedei lefatron min ha'maisa. They bring their fruits in through the roof, through the side entrances of the yards, their covered yards, never through the main gate, so that they don't have to give Maisa. These latter generations, they found a loophole in Maisa, a perfectly mahadran min mahadran shulchan aruch patur from giving Maisa. They do not have to. Midoraisa, if it didn't come through the Pnei Abayis, you don't have to give. And so they purposefully circumvent that entrance so that they don't have to look after the poor, the Levim and the Kahuna, and they can hold on to the money and have more money for themselves. Says Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eli, Boy Ra'eh, go see which method worked. The earlier generations had financial blessing, despite the fact that they gave much more away. Because it's not despite the fact they gave it away. It's because they were committed to giving it away. Because they were committed to helping, supporting Klal Yisrael with their Maisa, they received the most incredible blessing in their financial endeavors. But these latter generations, who only saw all the money as their own, they thought if they hold on to it, they'll have more for themselves. They missed out on the incredible blessing that we learned about in part 5 of this series. That tzedakah is the source of our financial bracha in our businesses. And this Gemara in Daf Lamed Hamad base really is the synopsis of everything that we've learned. If we're honest, we all want to work to make money. There's a way that the world suggests we go about doing that. Many different approaches to it. Hundreds of books in bookstores trying to teach you. The Torah lays down a 3-prong approach to building financial wealth that comes from the hand of Hashem, from the one who created the world. Gold and silver is in his hands. The people he chooses to bless with that financial wealth are those who committed to these 3 pillars. Tzedakah, fixed times for learning Torah, and placing Hashem's Ratzon before our own. As B'nai Torah, I feel that what we've learned until now is not enough. Sure, it's laid down the clear 3 pillars on how to build wealth according to the Torah, how the Torah instructs us to behave in order to be blessed with financial success. But as a Ben Torah, you want more than that. It's not a whole life, it's not about making money. There's a big component about it which is driven by that. But there is another component. A component that wants a relationship with Hashem. That wants to be connected to Ruchnis. That wants to grow. Wants to outgrow their desire for money, that they should want bigger things. They should want Olam Haba, not Olam Hazeh. They should want to be connected to Hashem and not only to financial things and Gashmias. And what I'd like to share with you in part 8 of this series is how work transforms a person's relationship and transforms a human being from being a person who is self-centered and driven by money to become a person who is Hashem-centered, who is Ruchniya-centered, whose life oozes with Avas Hashem, but through the workplace developing that relationship. It's an incredible journey to go through together, and I can't wait to learn part 8 with you.